What wedding guest made you instantly regret inviting them? Story 1. My mother turned my wedding reception into a raccoon documentary. And listen, I know that sounds harsh, but I genuinely don't know how else to describe a grown woman roaming table to table with a gallon-sized Ziploc bag, asking guests for leftover meat scraps, for her doggy, not greeting people, not thanking them for coming, not, oh hey, hope you're enjoying yourselves. Nope, just materializing behind guests mid-bite like some kind of bone-seeking apparition. Apparently, she had this giant freezer bag folded up in her purse the entire time, waiting, planning, hunting. She'd walk up while people were still eating and ask if she could have what they weren't finishing. And not casually either. My sister said she would literally hover and point at specific pieces. Are you gonna eat that chicken? Can I have the rib bone? That fat piece there. My dog likes those. I physically cannot imagine the level of secondhand embarrassment radiating through that ballroom. Thankfully, my sister realized what was happening before I did and basically ran defensive maneuvers all night to keep me away from it. She kept dragging me to the opposite side of the room while our husbands tried handling my mother like animal control officers responding to an unusual wildlife report. And eventually, they managed to calm her down by promising the kitchen staff would save all the leftovers for her, which was, honestly, brilliant because it was the only thing powerful enough to get her to sit down. Except the kitchen staff absolutely did not save anything. So naturally, she got furious. And somehow, this story still wasn't finished humiliating me because the next morning, this woman went back to the venue to retrieve the discarded food from the trash. I need you to understand the commitment level here. This wasn't asking for a to-go box. This became an archaeological dig for wedding bones. Apparently, she climbed onto a cardboard box to reach deeper into the dumpster. The box collapsed, and she fell in, broke 2 ribs, and couldn't climb back out. So somebody had to call 911 because my mother became physically trapped inside a dumpster searching for leftover wedding meat. Honestly, if this happened in a sitcom, I'd call it unrealistic. The best part, and by best I mean spiritually devastating, is that afterward, she refused to tell me how she got injured. Just vague answers, weird avoidance. I kept asking because obviously I was concerned. Finally, her sister snapped and yelled, "For God's sake, just tell her you went back for the damn bones." I swear to you, I almost passed out laughing when I finally learned the truth. Not immediately, though. Story 2. The rudest wedding guest at my wedding was another bride, which honestly sounds like the setup to a trashy TLC crossover special, but I swear this actually happened. Our venue had 2 separate ballrooms with 2 weddings happening at the same time. We had an open bar because my husband and I firmly believe if people are going to listen to wedding speeches for 4 hours, they deserve compensation and vodka. Apparently, the other wedding had a cash bar. Now, at first, nobody noticed anything weird, but after a while, our bartender starts side-eyeing random unfamiliar people because they weren't tipping and also had the distinct energy of raccoons sneaking into a campsite. Meanwhile, our guests had been tipping all night, so it became pretty obvious something was up. Turns out people from the other wedding had started quietly infiltrating our reception one by one to steal drinks. And honestly, kind of bold. Annoying, but bold. My groomsmen started lightly policing it, trying to figure out who belonged where, and apparently this had been happening for hours. Their wedding was much smaller than ours. We had around 150 people, so random strangers blending into the crowd wasn't immediately obvious, especially because this was pre-COVID when nobody thought twice about crowded rooms full of drunk people breathing directly into each other's souls. But then the situation escalated from petty drink theft to absolute cinematic insanity, because eventually, their bride walked up to our bar, in full wedding gown, train and all. Like, ma'am, you are not exactly undercover right now. I wasn't there for the initial confrontation, but apparently the bartender immediately shut her down, while the event manager got involved. Meanwhile, my groomsmen started estimating how much alcohol the neighboring wedding had stolen throughout the night, and apparently it was a lot. Like coordinated heist levels of liquor migration, and then, this is the part that still kills me, the bride from the other wedding walked past me while getting lectured by the manager about the extra charges they were now being billed for, and I accidentally laughed, not even in a mean way. I was drunk, and the entire thing felt so absurd, my brain short-circuited. Like, imagine getting caught stealing open bar drinks at another wedding on your own wedding night. Couldn't even send a cousin to do it. Had to personally lead the mission yourself, like Ocean's 11. Bridal edition. I actually felt a little bad for her for a second, because the whole thing screamed cheap, chaotic planning disaster. But also, girl, your venue wasn't even near ours. They had to actively search for our ballroom. That's commitment. And apparently she didn't realize how our bar package worked either. We weren't paying per drink. It was a flat rate, unlimited alcohol package based on guest count. So when the venue hit them with something like a $500 charge afterward for all the stolen drinks, I guess she was completely blindsided. Honestly though, the craziest part is imagining those guests slowly rotating into our ballroom all night like alcohol burglars while pretending they belong there. Somewhere, there's probably wedding footage of random strangers in formal wear speedwalking away, holding gin and tonics like raccoons carrying stolen hot dogs. Story 3. My wedding officiant genuinely felt like a side character written specifically to test my blood pressure. First of all, she was over an hour late, not running 5 minutes behind late, not traffic was bad late, I mean guests starting to murmur, bridesmaids checking their phones, my new husband pacing around trying not to have a stress aneurysm late. At one point, I started mentally calculating whether one of my cousins could just get ordained online and finish the job before sunset. And while everyone's stressed out wondering where she is, this woman finally rolls up like she's arriving to brunch. Zero urgency. Zero. And she brought her fully grown adult daughter with her for some reason. Nobody knew this woman. There was no warning. Suddenly, there's just an extra random person at my wedding wandering around holding a purse and asking where the bathroom is. But honestly, somehow still not the craziest part. Because after the ceremony, while we're busy talking to guests and taking photos and pretending we're not emotionally exhausted, this officiant apparently parked herself near the appetizers and absolutely demolished my bacon-wrapped scallops. All of them gone. Which sounds fake because who does that? But multiple people confirmed it. Like she treated the cocktail hour like a Viking raid. I didn't even get one. My own wedding scallops. I paid for those tiny little pork sweaters and never even saw them. And the daughter was eating too. Surprise bonus, dependent unlocked. At that point, they were basically freeloading wedding cryptids. So afterward, we asked for a partial refund because, I don't know, showing up catastrophically late and inhaling the appetizers felt mildly unprofessional. Apparently, this deeply offended her spiritual journey because instead of apologizing, she mailed us an actual physical letter talking about how we were going to hell. Hell for requesting a refund. Honestly, the confidence was incredible. Imagine being late, stealing seafood, then threatening eternal damnation like you're the final boss of Yelp reviews. And I did leave bad reviews afterward because I'm sorry. If your efficient experience ends with a handwritten curse note, future brides deserve a heads up. But this woman just changed her business name and kept going. Reinvented herself like a wedding industry supervillain. To this day, I'm convinced she's still out there somewhere under a new LLC, eating hors d'oeuvres and condemning couples to eternal suffering one barn venue at a time. Story 4. My wife's aunt is the reason I believe some people see boundaries as a personal challenge from God. We had signs everywhere asking people not to take photos during the ceremony because we paid actual professional photographers a disgusting amount of money to do their jobs. The officiant even made an announcement beforehand. Simple request, basic human cooperation. Apparently impossible for this woman. So the ceremony starts, music swells, everybody emotional. My wife starts walking down the aisle with her dad. Beautiful moment, right? Wrong. Because suddenly this aunt launches herself directly into the center aisle like she's embedded press in a war zone. Full body lean, iPad energy with a phone. Just standing there snapping pictures while our actual photographer is visibly trying to work around her human traffic cone ass. I remember making eye contact with my photographer and seeing the exact expression of a man calculating whether jail time would be worth it. And the worst part? Those procession photos are basically ruined. There's no magical remove drunk ant-shaped obstruction button when somebody parks themselves in the center of every shot, like Bigfoot at a national park. But wait, it gets dumber. 6 months later, she finally sends us the photos she took after acting like she personally saved the wedding memories, and they were complete garbage, low resolution, blurry, out of focus. One looked like it had been taken during an earthquake. Another somehow had her thumb in the corner despite smartphones existing for over a decade now. I spent literally over 10 hours in Photoshop trying to Frankenstein together one usable photo from the mess because there were no clean professional shots of that moment left. 10 hours of zooming in at 400%, layering images, whispering threats at my monitor like a sleep-deprived cryptid. Eventually, I just gave up because there's only so much digital necromancy a person can do. And of course, she also got aggressively drunk at the reception. Not fun drunk, not dancing queen drunk. I mean deeply irritating, cornering married men drunk. She spent half the night harassing my uncle, who was very married, in front of everybody, just sloppy flirting and touching his arm while his wife sat there looking like she wanted to legally classify murder as self-care. Years later, I still can't stand that woman. And every time somebody says, oh, everyone should just enjoy the moment instead of hiring photographers, I physically leave my body for a second. Because no, actually, Susan, what happens is Aunt Linda turns your wedding album into found footage horror. Story 5. My dad treated my wedding like it was his season finale episode. I genuinely cannot explain this man's relationship with attention, other than to say if there's a spotlight within 50 miles, he starts twitching like a moth near a porch light. So my sister was maid of honor, my husband had his best man, both were supposed to give speeches. Totally normal wedding setup. Then my dad asked if he could also give a speech. Against every survival instinct in my body, I said yes, because I was trying to keep the peace, which is honestly how people end up on true crime documentaries. The order was supposed to be sister first, then best man, then my dad. Simple. Apparently not simple enough for this man. My sister is literally mid-speech. Doing great, by the way, sweet story, everyone emotional. And suddenly my dad just walks up and takes the mic from her, not joking. Full WWE microphone steal. She didn't even finish her speech. He just cuts her off because apparently another human speaking for longer than 30 seconds caused him physical pain. Then this man starts his speech by complaining that he was supposed to go first. Sir, according to who? The voices? And somehow it got worse because one of his main points was basically telling the entire room my husband and I were rushing into marriage because we'd only been together 15 months. Which, first of all, not the speech topic. Second of all, imagine publicly roasting your own daughter's marriage during the wedding reception. Like, thanks, Dad. Love hearing the live director's commentary on my potential future divorce while I'm holding champagne. I remember sitting there, smiling so hard my face hurt because I knew if I let myself react even a little, I was gonna cry in front of everybody. And I refused to give him that too. That's the thing with attention seekers. Negative attention still counts to them. You can literally feel them feeding off the room's discomfort like emotional vampires in Dockers. And honestly, the signs were there from the beginning. When he walked me down the aisle, apparently after handing me off to my husband, he just stayed standing there behind us. Like he didn't want to sit down because then attention would move away from him. I didn't even notice because I was focused on not tripping in heels and disassociating through my own vows. But my mom, his ex-wife, which honestly explains so much, had to hiss from the front row for him to sit down, a grown man, at a wedding, being told to sit like an unruly substitute teacher. And of course, there were wedding planning disasters too, because people like this physically cannot participate in events they aren't controlling. Every conversation somehow became about his opinions, his complaints, his drama. I swear, planning that wedding aged me like a president. The wildest part, if you confront people like this later, they always act confused. I was just joking. I was trying to help. No, sir. You were trying to turn somebody else's life event into open mic night with trauma. Story 6. One of the most insane moments at my wedding involved a bridesmaid getting accidentally pantsed, except somehow worse, because it was an entire formal dress. So one of my bridesmaids was talking to this elderly guest during the reception. Sweet little moment, honestly. He was hard of hearing, so she was bent slightly forward, trying to talk directly to him while he sat at the table. Enter chaos. Another guest walks up behind her, and to this day, I still don't know what possessed this woman's spirit in that exact moment. Sees the zipper on the back of the bridesmaid dress and just yanks it, like fully commits. Not a little tug. Not, oops. I mean one smooth, fatal motion like she was starting a lawnmower. That dress dropped straight down, completely, in one swoop. I swear the entire reception froze like somebody hit pause on reality. My bridesmaid stood there in absolute shock while multiple people simultaneously lunged into action, trying to wrap tablecloths, jackets, anything around her. Meanwhile, the old man she'd been talking to apparently had no clue what happened and just kept trying to continue the conversation. Honestly, kind of iconic for him. And the woman who did it acted like it was some hilarious prank, which is genuinely sociopath behavior. Like, who sees a bridesmaid at a formal wedding and thinks, you know what this event needs? Public humiliation and accidental nudity. The bridesmaid handled it way better than I would have. If somebody did that to me at a wedding, there'd be a true crime podcast afterward. But somehow that still wasn't even the weirdest thing about this guest. She had come from out of town with a +1, perfectly normal. Except her ex-husband was also at the wedding because he was local, and by the end of the night, she apparently ditched the +1 entirely, hooked up with the ex-husband in her hotel room, and left the poor date just wandering around alone at the wedding like a confused Uber Eats driver abandoned at the wrong address. Imagine traveling out of town as somebody's wedding date only to realize midway through the reception, you've become a side quest in your own relationship. Honestly, the whole thing had the energy of a soap opera written by people actively on muscle relaxers. The funniest part is after the bridesmaid dress incident and the ex-husband hotel plot twist. The rest of the wedding was completely normal. Totally lovely evening. Dancing, cake, everybody happy, which almost makes it weirder somehow. Like we just collectively experienced 15 minutes of absolute feral nonsense, and then everybody calmly went back to eating chicken parmesan like nothing happened. If you enjoyed this chaos, hit subscribe and tell me the wedding story your family still argues about years later.